Eddie Murphy spent his whole life making people laugh, but behind the jokes lived a man who carried more tension than anyone imagined. People always saw the smile, the confidence, the natural energy that filled every room he walked into. What they didn't see was the weight he kept on his shoulders, a weight built from years of pressure, comparison, and silent frustration that he never allowed himself to show. He became a superstar so fast that nobody taught him how to deal with the emotions that came with success. He was young, gifted, and unstoppable, but fame came with shadows he didn't see at first. Some of those shadows were people who stood beside him with smiles, while secretly trying to knock him down. Eddie later admitted that he learned early on that admiration and envy can live in the same room. As the years passed, Eddie realized he didn't just dislike some actors around him, he secretly hated 7 of them. Not because they were bad people, but because each one represented a moment where he felt disrespected, betrayed, or pushed aside. He never said their names publicly because he knew the world would twist the story, but he carried the memories long enough for them to shape the man he became. Eddie always tried to stay calm, even when he felt his patience breaking. He learned to control his reactions, but he never forgot the times when people around him treated him like competition instead of a friend. In interviews, he always appeared relaxed, but inside he carried moments that cut deeper than he wanted to admit. These moments created a quiet anger that he kept hidden behind humor. Throughout his career, Eddie discovered that success didn't protect him from jealousy. In fact, it attracted it. Every time he became bigger, someone else grew bitter. Every time he made progress, someone tried to pull him back. These experiences left emotional marks on him, marks that remained long after the cameras turned off and the applause faded. Eddie often felt that people didn't see him as a human being. They saw him as a competitor, someone they needed to beat. He didn't ask for that kind of rivalry, but he couldn't escape it. The more famous he became, the more people judged him, challenged him, and tried to measure themselves against him. This turned his world into a battlefield, even when he only wanted peace. In private, Eddie sometimes sat alone and replayed the moments that made him lose trust in people. He remembered jokes that were really insults, advice that was really manipulation, and friendships that hid envy underneath. Each of the 7 actors who gained his hatred had done something that stayed with him for years. He said he didn't talk about it because he didn't want to start a war that would never end. One of the things that hurt Eddie the most was realizing how often success created tension instead of celebration. He wanted people around him to support each other, but instead he watched friendships break over jealousy. Some actors treated him like a threat the moment he started rising. They made comments, spread rumors, and acted like his success came at their expense. Eddie learned to smile through it, but inside he felt the sting. Even when he tried to ignore the negativity, Eddie felt its presence. He could feel when someone was pretending to like him. He could sense when someone wanted him to fail. He didn't talk about these moments publicly because he believed silence was a form of strength. But he carried everything inside, building a list of 7 names that stayed locked in his mind for decades. There were moments in Eddie's life when he wanted to confront these people, but he stopped himself every time. He believed that anger never solves anything. Instead, he focused on moving forward, building his work, and improving his craft. But a part of him still felt the frustration of never saying what he really wanted to say. That frustration stayed inside him like a stone he couldn't shake off. What surprised many people was how deeply Eddie could feel things. He wasn't cold or distant. He was sensitive in ways most people didn't expect. The comments and disrespect he faced didn't disappear easily. They stayed in his memory, sometimes replaying when he least expected it. He said this was one reason he grew quieter as he got older. Silence became a shield that protected him from more disappointment. By the time Eddie reached his late 30s, he felt exhausted by the pressure of always being compared to others. He didn't want to compete. He wanted to create. But the world kept pulling him into battles he didn't choose. Some of the 7 actors he secretly hated were people who constantly tried to prove they were better than him. They turned every interaction into a competition, even when Eddie tried to keep things peaceful. Eddie admitted that his hatred wasn't born from one big event. It came from a collection of small disrespectful moments, small betrayals, and small cuts that added up over time. He could remember conversations where people pretended to praise him while hiding criticism behind a smile. He could recall moments where people underestimated him, hoping he would lose his place. These moments formed a bitterness he kept hidden from the public. Even in the peak of his success, Eddie sometimes felt alone. He didn't know who he could trust. Everyone wanted something from him, and very few people genuinely supported him. The 7 actors he hated were reminders of how cruel the industry could be. They taught him lessons he never forgot, lessons about envy, competition, ego, and selfishness. As Eddie got older, the anger turned into understanding. He realized that the people he hated were dealing with their own insecurities. They weren't fighting him, they were fighting their fear of not being enough. This helped Eddie release some of the bitterness he carried. But even with that understanding, he never forgot how their actions affected him when he was young and still learning how to navigate fame. Eddie never planned to share this confession, but turning 60 changed something inside him. He started reflecting on his life, his choices, his emotions, and the people who shaped him. He felt ready to open up about the things he kept buried. He didn't reveal names because he knew it would create chaos, but he shared the truth that he carried hatred for 7 people who had crossed his path in painful ways. He said the hardest part was pretending he was fine when he wasn't. Pretending he wasn't hurt. Pretending he didn't notice the disrespect. Pretending he didn't care. Now, at 64, he felt lighter after admitting that those feelings were real. It was a small release, but a necessary one, because it helped him breathe again after years of staying silent. His confession showed a human side that many people never saw. He was not just a comedian. He was a man who faced pressure, jealousy, and emotional wounds like anyone else. The world saw him as unstoppable, but he struggled quietly behind the scenes. His honesty reminded people that even the strongest personalities can feel pain deeply. The first chapter of Eddie's confession revealed the weight he carried from early in his career. It showed the emotional battles he fought in silence, and the 7 individuals who shaped his understanding of trust, loyalty, and competition. It was the beginning of a story that went deeper than fame, touching the raw parts of his life that he rarely allowed the world to see. Eddie's confession didn't end with admitting the hatred he held. The deeper part of his story came from the way these experiences shaped his identity. He didn't just survive fame, he learned to live with emotional scars that slowly taught him who he could become.